Okay, so we are done with business model product. We're moving on to technology, right? So this is the exciting part. Okay, so on Walimai website, you mentioned that other anti-fake systems are not very secure and whatever, not right? So what makes your label different? You know, what's the RFID technology behind it, and how do you ensure the authenticity of the product? What's so special? What's the difference?
So let me start again. So it has the. Yes, I'll show it.
You can start from the. I will start at least from the sort of the big picture, from the like what we do for the blockchain. Yeah. Anyway, I can start.
You start.
I'm taking this question from you.
Sure.
So essentially, what are we doing? Like the basic claim that we're making is that blockchain cannot solve the problem of fakes in the physical world. Right. They just because it works in the digital world, but with the physical goods, you have to ensure some way that transactions that you make offline are reflected in the blockchain, and they have to be reflected there with 100% consistency. Right. But there's no way to do it now unless you're dealing with something like diamonds, because for instance, diamonds, they have a very unique, every diamond is unique in its sort of crystal structure. So if you scan it in a certain way, you can codify it. It becomes a kind of a unique and copyable element which is embedded in the product itself. So now there's a startup called Everledger that did blockchain for diamonds. We're dealing with consumer products, and for consumer products, it's with the current state of technology, it is impossible to uniquely to make kind of this unique scanning of every milk powder. Probably every, or probably on the microscopic level, every kind of unique powder is unique, but it's just impossible to implement it this way.
On the other hand, for the consumer, we can't really expect every consumer to have a special tool to do the scanning. So like they can do with diamonds, right? To do that with diamonds, you also need a special like scanning device that will okay for diamonds, but then you're not going to expect every vial of bottle of alcohol or can of powder to do something very, very special and bring equipment to scan it.
So I mean, going ahead, so effectively for blockchain to work, to fight fakes in the real world, you have to make sure essentially that your product is 100% protected, right? So the way we do it is that we protect the packaging of the product with the label. So basically what the claim that we can make in terms of the anti-faking is that when the label is scannable by the consumer, it means that the packaging has not been tampered with, it has not been opened with, and this way we ensure the 100% consistency between the sort of physical product and its the transactions which are reflected in the blockchain.
The digital identity of the product in the blockchain.
Right? Yeah. So unlike, for example, with clothing, where you just put some RFID tag, for example, on some label within the clothing, it's not very difficult to fake it, right? You just cut it down, you sew it up again, and it just scans as authentic. Right. For us, it's impossible because as soon as you try to open the packaging in any way, it just it stops scanning. Essentially, it just breaks because that's where the unique design of the label comes in. So it's not just the digital algorithm that runs in the background. It is also the physical features which are essential if you want to protect physical products, because we're essentially creating this interlink. So if you want to,
so just to go a little bit deeper on that. So the label itself has two sides. There's the physical side of protection and the digital side of protection. The physical side is to do with the materials that we use and the layer structure, the type of glue that we use and all of those things. So that on one hand, it acts as a protective layer so it doesn't damage the chip or the antenna during the normal transportation, because that would lead to product getting off the line, essentially more losses for us, for the merchants. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, it's fragile enough and sticky enough that when you open the product, it breaks, and also you cannot just take the label off the product because then it breaks as well. So it becomes impossible on physical level, because impossible to take the label out and put it onto the fake product. So that's one side, the physical side. Then there is the digital side, and this is what I was mentioning, this banking device, which is normally the best way to explain it. So on that banking device, it works with something called rolling codes. Basically, there are codes that are inbuilt into the algorithm, or they're just stored on that device with encryptions and all that. And each time you use the banking device to log into internet banking, it gives you a new code. Same with Google Authenticator. Very similar idea here. each time a consumer is scanning the chip, the data on the chip and data at the back is changing. Data in the clouds on the server is changing. So that makes it nearly impossible theoretically and practically impossible to actually fake the chip. We've seen a lot of companies claiming that they have very secure RFID because they use encryption. And it doesn't quite work like that, because you can either use a very expensive active RFID, which has its own limitations, and we can go into that later if you want, or they use the non-active or the passive RFIDs. Now, the trick with encryption is that well, encryption can work, can be very secure encryption algorithm, but you don't need to understand and break the algorithm to clone something. If you have an encrypted message, you take it, you copy it, you put it onto something else, and then the system will not be able to distinguish that this is encrypted message on the same but already fake device. Right? So basically, in terms of anti-faking, it's not encrypting, it's avoiding cloning that you need, and encryption doesn't save from that. Yeah, so that's a very important decision to make. Now, there may be more things that are possible with active chips, but those are very expensive and they require a battery. If you have a battery, it needs to stay for a very long time. Otherwise, in the logistics chain, especially when it gets colder, the batteries don't work very well. It becomes a big mess. So it doesn't really work.
But it's also like if you take FMCG plus moving consumer goods in some sort of remote villages in China or other places, they can last. They can stay for a year on the shelf, and I don't think that an active RFID chip can work, even if it's affordable enough.
The problem is maybe some of them will stay, but then let's say 10% of them go out of shelf life, and you have the consumer, it comes, it doesn't work, and then the retailer gets a bit worried that the consumer cannot scan. Yeah. You gotta be careful with that. Right?
Okay. So how does WaBi or Walimai utilize the blockchain then? This is one of the questions.
Yeah. So there's two blockchains, right? We're building the blockchains right now, right? I don't want to say that we have the blockchains, so we're building them. It's not operational yet. So the way that there's one blockchain is for the logistics and anti-counterfeit system, and the second blockchain is for the loyalty program. And we need to use two because there's very different qualities that we need from them. So the first one, the way that it's utilized is to track all of the transactions and to have all of the data clearly of what went where, which product, with which digital identity is essentially with which owner. Right? So that's one. The way that it works well for Walimai is, well, first in terms of clarity in the data that's being generated, the additional services that can be generated on top of that. But very importantly, it's to do with the credibility that it gives. Some people say, oh, it's blockchain, so it's going to be very secure. Well, if you have very secure server, it's kind of the same, right? You can't tamper with that too easily. However, if I have a very secure server, potentially I could fake my own data, right? And then with blockchain, I cannot do that. So we're looking at that as an organization, and we want to say that, well, even we cannot tamper with our data. It's all on blockchain, so it secures us as an organization from risks. But on top of that, it gives more credibility that people see that even we cannot tamper with it. So they trust us more, and that's the one thing that is super important for us. Right now, when we produce the labels, very often we got the question, okay, where do you produce the labels? Is it in China itself? It's like, yes, it's in China. And say, oh, but then can't they manufacture fake them?
There's a counterfeit label.
Exactly. Or can't they, like when they produce like 1,000 labels for you can produce 1,000 fake labels? Well, they can. Fine, but they will not work because we encode them in a different place, and the manufacturer doesn't know anything about that encoding.
Right.
Yeah, when they get encoded, this is the critical piece of information that's being written onto the chip, and the manufacturer has nothing to do with it. Right. So they cannot fake the labels. Same idea with the blockchain. Now coming to the blockchain with the loyalty points, like I was saying, we'll start with Ethereum, then most likely move to a different blockchain. That is again the credibility and the fact that people will not be able to, or the company or us or the merchants will not be able to tamper with the value of those labels. I can tell you my personal experience with some of the airlines. Like you fly, sometimes you choose you do choose the airline because you are part of their mileage program, right? You collect those miles, and then a year later you realize that what used to be 20,000 miles is now 50,000 miles. And you're like, oh, why was I collecting them? Right. And that kills the credibility of the system. So with WaBi being on blockchain, that's not going to happen. On top of that, there are additional services that again can be built in terms of the data, in terms of the understanding of the consumers. There's lots of things in that direction as well. And one important quality that we will look at when we're choosing the blockchain for WaBi itself is to do with integrations with other players. For example, if they are integrated with some of the payment methods, that could be very beneficial for WaBi because I'm speaking potentially now, but let's say we work with someone like 10x, for example. They're also based in Singapore.
Yeah.
If I'm saying if, right, we don't have any discussion, I don't want to claim anything that's not happening yet.
Right.
But if let's say people can pay with their 10x cards but using WaBi, that's just an additional use case. Right. So that's the kind of features that we're going to be looking at.
But it's also just, to sort of expand on your point that blockchain essentially is a much better platform for loyalty points, because loyalty points now is a huge pain in the neck for a lot of companies and issuers, because they have a huge liability, so outstanding liabilities of unclaimed points that they have to keep on their balance sheets and they cannot utilize. For people, similarly, as Alex was mentioned before, it's actually the scope is too narrow and it just becomes not worthwhile. That's why only airlines or airline alliances or like hotel chains made a successful use case for them. But with the blockchain, it becomes much more, just much easier to transfer and move around these points. It just becomes a much more valuable loyalty point from the consumer side as well. So yes,
maybe it can be very easily understood from the accounting concept. So right now, when there were some questions or maybe even issues about the way that loyalty points for airlines should be accounted on the balance sheet. And when the new rules came in and the companies had to account for a big liability, because points are liability for them, Delta had almost $4 billion as a liability on their balance sheet. And it's kind of difficult for the company, especially if you're a traded company, it affects how you perform on the stock market and things like that. It's a pretty serious question for them. When it's a crypto point, the company doesn't have the liability. It's your crypto point, and you use it, you own it. It's not the liability of the company. It's an asset that you own.
It is not a credit instrument if you want. Yes.
Yeah, it's essentially an instrument, right? So it becomes very, very different in terms of accounting concepts then, and it works much better for the companies.
So we decided, if we want to build a blockchain, we might as well do it the right way. I mean, not blockchain. If we want to build a loyalty program, we might as well, build it on the most advanced platform available now.
Right. I guess it's even more important for WaBi or Walimai because it's anti-counterfeit, right? So it's trust is even more important. But now, question: is this technology patented by a company or per se, the tools that you're using?
So with WaBi, there is. Well, at least we didn't find anything to patent right now. There may be something later on. With Walimai, we've considered the anti-counterfeiting mechanism. At the same time, we realized that patenting it will not be a very strong protection. Frankly, the biggest protection that we can have is the trust of the consumers. It's the fact that we don't have any scandals. And I do believe we will not have the scandals with the anti-counterfeiting feature because it is a strong technology. And the fact that people believe in us, that's really amazing.
I mean, the question of patenting actually came up in I think 2014, and so we spoke to a lawyer, to the patent lawyer, and did all sort of. We were preparing to file for the patent in China as well, and. Essentially, what we were told is that it might be better, to keep it closer to the chest. Essentially, what you are building right now, because when you are building something, when you're filing for a patent, it might not necessarily be 100% secure in terms of how confidential it stays, right? So we advised, just to keep it down low.
Basically, there's a time gap between the time when you file and the time when patent get issued, and that's when things may go a bit tricky. Right? Okay, that's not good.
Cool. Okay, great. So the next 3 questions will be about technology and how the industry per se. So we are aware about Wharton, right? So what we were mentioning just now. So Wharton chain ecosystems, just for the viewers, right, combines blockchain and RFID technology to significantly streamline the management of supply chains, right? So what's the difference here in RFID technology, or what's stopping Wharton from coming into the counterfeit industry?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we're not talking about the business side, we're just talking about the technology. Yeah, okay. Technology. I've had a brief look through the white paper, and there's a lot of good detail, which is always very much appreciated. I think if we speak about the differences, I think there's a few. First, it looks like they're developing their own RFID chip and their own RFID reader. And the second thing is that this chip looks like it will be an active chip, so with a battery, with a CPU, which is required for the encryption and decryption, which they're using as the base for the uniqueness of the chip, so it can be faked. So we already touched a little bit on the active chips. Basically, with the active chips, it becomes a lot more expensive, and the fact that you have the active chips, it needs a battery. The battery might run out. It may become a problem for the supply chain. Now, I didn't go too deep into the specifics of the solution, and maybe they do have a good solution for it. Maybe they will have a battery that can last for 2-3 years. But frankly, the businesses that we spoke to, they're always very worried. They always ask this question, and we keep them at ease by saying, no, it's a passive chip. We can stay for 100 years. It's still going to be there. It's fine. With the active chip, you're not going to be able to say that. So they will need to work hard to make sure that it's a very good solution on the active chip. So that's one thing. Second thing, in terms of the technology and the RFID is we're much closer to the user in terms of being able to having adoption of the technology. Having your own reader means that they will probably need to limit themselves just to B2B applications, because they're not going to push the consumers to buy the customized readers which work with their chips. Right? You're not going to expect people to buy a customized reader just to allow them to authenticate one product. The consumers just don't work like that. They want convenience. They want to use their own mobile phone. And that's the big difference with us. We use standard technology. We use standard chips. We use standard readers. So an Android phone from my Sony can read, or Samsung, they can all read the chips, and we don't really need anything more customized from the consumer, apart from downloading our app and registering on it. But that's what consumers are okay to do. So these are the big differences in terms of the technology.
Yeah, I think that although we spoke about technology, not about the business, I think it's important to notice that our business model essentially is our technology works because of our business model. So our business model and technology, they are complementary to each other, because our business model enables this secure sort of collective authentication on individual level that ensures sort of this higher level security. Therefore, anyone can move into any sphere they want. But you would have to replicate a lot of things in order to achieve what we have been able to achieve with just using passive chips and, as Alex was saying, just standard infrastructure, because we have to implement the entire business model around it, or build something completely different. And I mean, I guess you could do that, but if you have a core that you're competent in already, I would, as a former business consultant, I would advise concentrating on the core business, because if you start venturing into greener fields, then you risk being burned. So, I mean, anyone can move anywhere, but again, it's just that sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't.
Maybe there's one additional thing. They seem to be concentrated a bit more on the garments industry, and that's fine. There's some of the garments industry B2B players, they're interested in RFID technology, and this is the industry that we're not concentrated on. Just like I was saying, we think that FMCG, the food and beverage and pharmaceuticals they have a lot clearer use cases, and that's what affects the technology development going forward as well.
Again, there was a notice on one of the reviews essentially that they still face this problem of chip and its attachment to the product that it intends to protect. So they have to make sure that the chip cannot be the product that is behind the chip cannot be easily replaced, and unless they achieve that, and it kind of becomes redundant on the consumer space.
And it's pretty much what we already sold with the label.
With a label and the packaging, right? So our claim is we're not claiming as much. So we're claiming that we can we can protect packaged products. We can produce. So.
Right. Okay. Great. So this is with regards to Alibaba, right? So we know this is a giant in China. So I've read, and they are also countering counterfeits, right, in China, right? So they introduce artificial intelligence, better data modeling, and certain codes. I've seen the latest CNBC video. So how do you see WaBi fitting in, or how do you see them as a competitor in a sense?
In a way, it is. I mean, we can see it as a competitor, where two companies, in that sense, solving the same problem, right? Which we're maybe complementing each other.
Right.
Now, I would just explain it from the consumer side. So Alibaba is taking it kind of from the top-down approach, which is, being giant like Alibaba probably is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And then they try to identify, okay, where are the big pockets of counterfeiting? This is where the artificial intelligence, the data will be able to catch. At the same time, it's not going to work very well, or I guess it will not very well at the individual item level. Now, if you imagine yourself as a consumer, you come to the shop and you think, okay, so this can of baby food that I'm buying for my baby has a very small chance of being fake. It still doesn't really feel right. So basically, you need protection, especially for the critical products. You need protection at the individual level. So when a can or a bottle or whatever else that you're holding in your hand, you know that this product is safe, this product is real. And you don't care about the 99.9% of other products that may be real or fake. What you care about is the exact can that you're holding in your hands. And that means that the technology, from the consumer eyes, the technology protection should be at the item level. So that's the big difference in terms of the approach that we have in terms of the technology.
It's also about something to do with the business model of Alibaba, as I mentioned in the Telegram chat, because they are very concerned and on the breadth of products that they offer. Because if you look at Maiyu's interviews, he compares himself to Walimai, saying that if you want to serve additional 10,000 customers, it takes Walmart, I don't know, two stores, for him just do service. But if you imagine yourself as a platform where you cater to all these producers, and you say that, okay, so these producers, they can apply this technology that guarantees 100% safety. So what do you do about the rest? It's what kind of message are you communicating to your consumers? So let's say they have two merchants that have different cost structure for whatever reason, and one of them can implement it, another one can't. So he becomes just a huge handicap to have a platform endorsed anti-counterfeiting or a safety kind of protocol or safety label or whatever, to apply it only selectively to some merchants and not to others. And because it will be just detrimental to the breadth of offering that they have.
They basically have to make the authenticity claim at the platform level, right? They cannot say, okay, we have a small part or some part that are authentic and the other ones are not so authentic. Right? It just doesn't work in terms of the image to the consumer. So because of the size and the business model, it's kind of hard for them to make it very exact and say, okay, it's 100%, everything is authentic. It just doesn't work. And so the solutions that they're working on, it will improve the situation, but it's going to be very hard for them to solve the problem 100%.
But I think it's maybe not even the problem that they're trying to solve, right? For them, just reducing the level of fakes, maybe just again, as you said, on the high level, just making it a more trustworthy platform. But essentially, it's all a head-to-head competition with us because we offer 100% protection for a selected kind of. Will always still be limited range of products. Will not be like open to all sorts of cheap plastic toys, which is all Alibaba.
That makes sense. I mean, they can't be saying that this apple is authentic or this particular pear is authentic, right? So that's what I mean. Okay, great. So I understand. I'm looking at your site on onecoin.io and looking at some of the very talented advisors. Yeah, so could you just walk us through some of the advisors and their expertise and how have they been helping you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So with advisors, when we were putting together the ICO project, and we thought, okay, so we need to make some of our advisors public because that's what people care about. We've been working with quite a few people, and some of them we cannot make them public because sometimes they have something in the contract which prohibits them from that.
Right.
Okay, fair enough, so we don't do it. That's why it actually took us some time to confirm some of our advices. It was not to confirm the advices, it was to confirm making it public. Yeah. So I'll speak about the 4 people that we have on the website. So first one is, or maybe a bit about how we chose whom to publish. We thought it would be important to not just have a bunch of people with big names. It would be important to be clear on what is it that they're bringing, and not having too much overlap in terms of what they bring, but also each one of them really helping us advise on various things. So first one on the website is Mario Pasos. So he's very well connected in the crypto world. He, as he says, he lives and breathes crypto. And he's really helping us with understanding the mechanics and understanding the crypto world, or anyone that we need to speak to. He's very helpful with that. At the same time, he used to work for MasterCard, he used to work for Citibank. So there's a lot of the financial part in terms of payments that he's really helping us with. Second one is Igor Levant. So he is my former colleague from McKinsey. But before that, he was an executive director with Goldman Sachs as well. So he's been working a lot in finance. He's done a lot of big transactions. He understands finance very well. But at the same time, he understands business very well. So in terms of the general strategy setting or any financial affairs that we have, he's really helping us with the advice there. The third person that we have on the website is Long Chiu. He's an expert in loyalty programs. So he's been working with the Intercontinental Hotels, and he's been working with Mead Johnson Nutrition. And in both companies, he was either running or very, very closely managing the loyalty programs. And this is the thing that he really knows inside out. And given that we're essentially building a loyalty program with WaBi, that's exactly the expertise that we need. So he's helping us with that as well. And I guess Yaroslav would introduce the fourth.
Yeah, the fourth is Mark Zavatsky, who is the business development director at AliExpress, which is essentially the international arm of Alibaba. And Mark is essentially an old China hand, so he knows China very well. He's been here for, I don't know, 15 years or so.
In China.
In China. Sorry.
No problem.
So he had very sort of colorful careers. He worked as a journalist. He had his own company, and then eventually he ended up at Alibaba. And so for us, it's very important to have his expertise in e-commerce, because he's very experienced e-commerce executive. He managed to, within I think 3 years, he managed to bring AliExpress as the most visited e-commerce website in Russia. And so he's advising us on the whole e-commerce strategy and sort of the future growth opportunities. And as I mentioned, again, sort of our growth opportunities is not just limited to country by country, but it's also sort of works well with cross-border. And him being the guru of cross-border, it's really good to have him advising us on all the sort of cross-border trades and protect the opportunities that we can have with Walimai and WaBi.
So are there other advisors within the team? Do you have to mention the names, just say what expertise they bring through? Or are you looking for anyone else right now?
Not too actively. We have a lot of other things to take care of. If we meet more people and we see that there's good chemistry between, there's a good click, it works well, we will start considering. It takes a bit of time too, right? You really need to start working with the people before you can really. It's not even about the publication, it's about being able to trust the person's advice, right? You need to work with them for some time. There's a few more people that we are talking to. There's especially people on the IT who are helping us both in terms of the strategy and in terms of even checking the code that we've got. There's one of the professors from one of the top universities in Moscow. He's teaching computer science, and he's great not just at coding. He is good, but he's very good at checking the code, because that's what he does as students, right? So he's reviewing our code to make sure that we don't have any mistakes.
So Alex, yes, let's talk about the ICO stage right now, right? So on the ICO channel, there was a lot of questions asked on the pre-ICO and the current ICO. So what are some of the differences, right? And some of them did mention, would there be any dumping from pre-ICO into this coming ICO? So just share your views on that.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. In terms of the difference, first, I think it's very important to be clear in the terms. There was the pre-ICO that we did. Sometimes people talk about the pre-sale and they confuse the two, and then there's the ICO that's happening. So what we did was pre-ICO, not the pre-sale. Pre-sale is something that's normally done in a covert way. People don't know about this, like things being sold. That's not what we did. What we did is the pre-ICO, which is essentially raising a small amount of money to actually run the ICO. To run the ICO, it's not that cheap. I can tell you, it's just the legal fees can be very expensive, and especially as we are working with 3 legal firms in China and Singapore and in the US as well. Raising that money was important for us to have a successful ICO, and that's what we did. We raised $300,000 just to run the ICO itself. So we're using that money to run the ICO. So that's what's happening, and the ICO itself will be starting. So far, we have a tentative date on the 7th of November, so we're moving towards that date, and we'll try to confirm it 100% soon. And that's where the main ICO will be happening. So I think it's very important to be clear on that. Now, you're right, there's been a lot of questions about the dump. We sold tokens effectively at 3 cents per WaBi at the pre-ICO, whereas the price at the ICO will be starting at 15 cents per WaBi. So there's a very big gap. So we completely realize that it's a pretty big, I guess, a discount or a benefit that you can say, but there's a few things to consider. First thing, and something that people I think don't realize when they think about this dump, and could it be a big thing? So we sold effectively 10 million WaBis at pre-ICO, and the total circulation supply of WaBis after the ICO will be 50 million. Actually, a bit less than that. Let's say 50 million. So that 10 million is 20% of the total circulating supply. So on top of that, a lot of people who bought WaBis in the first round, they told the community, they told us that, well, we actually want more. And when they were buying, there was a lot of people who didn't get the WaBis or pre-WaBis, who still wanted to buy, but there was no more allocation, so they couldn't. So they will come in at the ICO right now. So let's take a hypothetical example. People do dump WaBis when it hits the exchange. Let's say half of them do that. Yeah, so that's 10% of the total circulation supply. So in simple terms, let's assume that means 10% price drop. So that's 10% price drop. On top of that, there will be some people who will not be able to get WaBis for certain reasons, like they didn't pass the KYC, for example. So they can't get WaBis from us, but at the same time they managed to pass the KYC because some exchanges will have different rules at the exchange. So they will only be able to get it at the exchange. So the price drop will not be 10%, it will be less. And now just look at the chart of Ethereum or Bitcoin, like 10% price drop, it happens like a daily thing, right? It goes down, it goes up. So if people just focus on this potentially 10% price drop, I'm not claiming there will be 10%, right? The market will show. But if it is 10%, and if it is indeed a price drop of 10%, why do people care about it so much? That's in crypto, this is something that happens daily, and then it goes back up, then it goes back down, and that's the volatility that you just got. I would really encourage people to think about a lot more long-term things. What's the potential of the project 6 months down the line, a year down the line? How many people will be using it? That's the kind of questions that are really important.
You want to mention the numbers for the current loyalty programs, how much it's worth?
Yeah, like when we were designing the system, we were thinking, okay, how big can this get? We were looking at some of the numbers to get, just even rough sense for ourselves.
Right.
We saw that for Delta Airlines, the liability they have on the balance sheet, i.e. the value is almost $4 billion. There are other, like for Marriott, it's $2.5 billion that they have. So these are big, and it's just for one company. Yes, it's a big company, but it's just one company, right? Whereas we're building the whole channel. So it's a lot more important to think longer term and to think how big can it get, rather than, okay, what's going to be the first few days when it hits the exchanges, and what's going to be done by the initial callers, and okay, the price may go down by 10%.
Then the supply is always limited at 100 million, right? So this is not changing.
So it's not changing.
There is no.
That will not change.
There's 100 million tokens. Another thing is that during the pre-ICO, actually the average investment was like $2,000.
No, less than that. So we had about 300 people who got tokens at the pre-ICO. The biggest one was, I think, $15,000 or $16,000. I keep forgetting the number, but it was
That's the
15 or 16, maybe 15. Yeah. So
that's our whale actually.
That's our whale, yeah. And also, because we were not limiting the amount how much people could buy, there was actually no reason for a single person to split.
Right.
It was actually just making it more difficult to do the transaction. So we do believe it's actually 300 different people. Given that it's 300 different people, it's very distributed. So it's not that one whale just bought it all out and we're done with the exchange, right? It will be a lot more distributed.
So basically, with a low base, the numbers can look huge, like it's 5%. But actually, per individual, so that's not a big chunk of money that they're making if they're dumping this money.
$1,000 per person.
Yeah, so you effectively $1,000, you get 5,000 back. But if you look at sort of the bigger picture, how big it can get, it's not worth it, even to dump. And as Alex was saying, even half of them decide to dump, then it's just noise in the growth.
Yeah, when we spoke to also our advisors on this, they said, no guys, don't worry about this. Like the people that we speak to, they all say, no, I want to buy more. Because also, when they bought at the pre-ICO, the project didn't look that shiny, right? We've been working on the business, we've been working on the label. We didn't have the time to really polish the project, right? It was not that good to sell.
It's like a vision they're casting.
Yeah. So people had to really believe in us. Once they spoke to us, they had a lot more faith. Right. But when they just saw the website and all that, it was like some people were worried that it's a scam.
Even some of the reviewers claimed that they had to check like several times whether the project was a scam.
Yeah, and it makes sense because we were literally just doing it back in the envelope, kind of in terms of building the ICO. We didn't hire any consultant to do the ICO. We're doing everything ourselves. So people at the pre-ICO had to have a lot more faith in us, and now, well, they did, and now they look at us like, wow, now guys, I understand your project even better. I like it more. I'm going to buy more. Like that's what we keep hearing. Whether it's going to be a lot of dumping or not, obviously we don't know, but we'll see. Like I said, it's probably not that important.
We're looking our own tokens like for a year or something.
Yeah, the team and founders will be getting tokens not at the day of the ICO, not when it hits the exchange. We're going to be getting it throughout almost a year. So 10% of the allocation per month that we're going to be getting. So if the value just keeps going down, we're not really getting anything out of this personally. So
very positive about it.
So you have a stake in it, that's it. Okay. So with the ICO, the amount that you've raised, what are you going to do with it? Like, are you going to be marketing, establishing relationship with merchants, or bringing new products? What are you going to do with it?
Part of it is the product and the product development, but it's a very limited part. Depends on how much money you raise. Like, you can't spend millions and millions on a development team, right? And we're not going to do that. The biggest part of the money will really go to development of the sales flow and marketing.
Okay.
Right. The system may be great, and I'm sure we will build a great system. At the same time, if people don't use it, if people don't understand it, people don't know it, it's useless. So most of the money will actually go to marketing and promotion of the system, with the consumer's promotion of the sale, so that things are moving, the WaBis are being used, and there's a natural flow which will also help us. As long as people are using it, it gives us the data to actually improve the system. So it's like the virtual cycle that's or spiral that we want to get into.
Okay. So what is the utility value of the token then? What can it be used for? Similar to that.
So on the system side, it's promotion of the usage, and promoting the usage on the technical side gives collective security to the whole system in terms of anti-fake. And on the other side, promotion of usage, it works in the same way as a loyalty program. So people learn about the brands, people trust the brands, people kind of keep going hand in hand with the brands, and just like any other loyalty program helps to do that. Right. So that's on the company side. And then on the consumer side, consumers will see it as a loyalty program, right? You get the points, and then they encourage you to do certain things. You get an additional discounts. You feel more attached to the brand. It's the same as with any loyalty program. With an addition that it's on blockchain, so it's actually a lot more trustworthy.
So what's the target for the ICO? How much are you targeting to raise in this?
So we will start with, we're selling 42 million tokens.
32.
32. I'm sorry, yes, 32. 10 was sold, so 32 we're selling. And what we will do in terms of sales is actually very different from all the ICOs we've seen so far. What we're going to do is an auction. So we've considered a lot of different economic models, and we thought that the auction was really the only model that would give the real chance to anyone participating to get the share that they want to take, and B, it actually transfers most of the value that is project worth, and that value determined by the contributors. It transfers most of that value to the project itself for the development of the project, rather than to the pocket of the speculator. So the way that it will work is like an auction. People will come and register. There will be no rush with it. They'll be able to upload the money effectively and see, okay, this is how much money in USD that they're able to use at the auction. And then when the ICO starts, they can bid. It will be a very open system. Soon we'll publish some pictures and videos of usage. And people will be able to bid, saying, okay, this is how much I want to bid, which this is the price. And effectively, people who bid the highest price will get the tokens. We've had a lot of questions regarding whales joining in and kind of taking it all, and I understand these claims, I understand why people are worried about that. So with the auction system, it's effectively not going to be possible, because let's say a whale comes in and buys out the whole round of, let's say, 5 million tokens, and there's no more available in the round. Then it's very simply anyone who wants to buy 10 tokens, they can go and set a slightly higher price, and then they get it, and the allocation of the whale gets cut. So effectively, the contributors decide A, the value of the tokens, and B, the distribution of the tokens. And all of the value that the project is worth, and like I explained, determined by the contributors, actually goes to the project, and then we're going to be using this money to develop this project, right? It's not our money, it's the project money.
So in the end, at the end of the crowd sale, if you want, you'll end up with the true value. This is the truest value of the token. Everyone agrees what the market agrees on, essentially.
And just maybe to make another example, what happens very often right now is people get into some sort of a limited white list, yellow list, red list, whatever they call it, golden list, silver list, and then it gets restricted to a certain number of people. Now, a lot of the people there will be speculators. Then they buy the tokens, and then when it hits the exchange, it goes much higher because there's a lot of unmet demand, and that's when they dump it. So this system, I think it actually encourages this kind of speculative behavior and dumping of the tokens. So it's basically not going to work with us. As long as you pass the KYC, which KYC is not there to restrict the number of people. KYC is to make sure that we are good on the regulation side, we are fulfilling any requirements in terms of anti-money laundering and things like that, right? This is the kind of thing that you just have to do. So as long as you pass the KYC, you can participate. Simple as that. There may be some country restrictions, like we mentioned, we will definitely be restricting the China citizens, China residents for regulation reasons. But other than that, anyone friendly can participate in the token sale. And I was finishing my example with the speculators. So what happens is, if they're coming from a restrictive list, there's an unmet demand, and then once it hits the exchange, the price goes up, and the speculators get a big part of the value, which is actually the project's value. Yeah. So speculators are happy, but the project actually gets less money than it's worth. Right. Like with our system, the fair price will determine what's the project worth. And then all of this money will go to the development of the project rather than to the pocket of the speculator. And the more money we get for the development, the better project we'll be able to build, and we're going to be able to do it faster.
Right. So you mentioned there's a circulating supply of 100 million, and for this ICO it's 32 million. So what are you going to do with the rest of the tokens?
So 10 million tokens were sold at the pre-ICO. 32 million are going to be sold at the ICO. 8 million goes to essentially the extended team, and then 50 million will be kept in an escrow and slowly fed into the system to promote the usage. So if we compare ourselves to other ICOs, very often they have a certain allocation that is there to promote the development on the project, to encourage the developers, for example, right? Or sometimes it's there to encourage the partnerships. For us, encouraging the developers or the partnerships, that's less important just because of the nature of the project. So that money will go to the users, the people who buy the products with Walimai labels on it, to encourage the usage of the system, so that they tell their friends, and family, and all the standard marketing.
And just to emphasize, this escrow will be kind of governed by very strict rules in terms of how much can be fed into the system, and will be linked to the overall circle of the sales volume, or the real sales volume in the Walimai ecosystem. So.
Yeah, that is really needed to avoid the situation when there's 50 million that's being in an escrow being dumped on the markets to kill the value of the token. It's just too many YB and the market is not good. So slowly it will be fed, like Yaroslav said, linked to the sales value, sales volume, which is very similar to the usage of the RFID.
I think one of the reasons why this question was asked is because we all understand that cryptocurrency is a very volatile asset, right? So for instance, if let's say today it cost me 10 WaBi to buy a milk powder, what would happen maybe in the next 3 months? It becomes, say, you can't buy more, right? Maybe 10 WaBi tokens in last 3 months ago, now you take about, say, 100 WaBi to buy the milk powder. So how do you actually keep the currency as WaBi consistent? How do you keep it consistent?
The value on the exchange, or?
The value on the exchange and the value in the system.
It's
kind of an interlinked thing.
Well, there's the limited supply overall. The circulating supply starts at 42 million and slowly grows higher and higher, but depending on the sales volume, it grows with the sales volume effectively. So that's on the supply side. On the demand side, we're going to do our best to grow the demand and the circulations as much as possible. Because the bigger the system, the more sales there are, the more projects there are, the more countries it covers. Right?
The more stable it is.
The more stable it is, actually.
Essentially, we expect some volatility with the prices, at least at the early stages. But I don't think that a lot of people, this will be, on the consumer side, will be buying huge chunks of WaBi, essentially keeping them as a store of value. Right. Rather, they will be encouraged to use them within the system, so they will mine something that they will want to redeem immediately afterwards. But as we see, as the system grows and becomes much more and more stable, you can look now at the sort of adoption of Bitcoin versus Ethereum, with Bitcoin being much more stable currency, just because of the general usage. And once a total token supply is in the circulation, we only expect the value go up and the prices will be going down all the time, because we will just be of this natural demand for the product. The more transactions we generate, the more demand there is for the token. Therefore, for the token holders, we expect the price to go up.
Right. Don't take it as an investment advice.
Investment advice.
Look at the
supply and demand.
Look at the size of the markets. Right.
So essentially,
we're big markets.
Okay, so this is an interesting question. So tell me more about the mining process for WaBi tokens. How was it created?
Okay, so basically there will be two ways to obtain the WaBi token for the average user. Right. Essentially, the user who buys product within the Walimai ecosystem. So one is we need to incentivize the consumers to scan the labels and change the codes. So effectively bring this individual action into sort of collective security. Therefore, we will provide will be a mining process. So in a way that if you scan it, you get some WaBi. So it will be as simple as that. It will be much more elaborate on the technical scale. So like how many times you can scan one product, how many products you can scan per day.
To avoid any abuses.
To avoid these abuses, but the concept is in itself is very simple. So this is effectively WaBi will be distributed for specific behavior that we need for the system. Right. And the second way to obtain WaBi is by Walimai protected products and be rewarded for your purchases. And so it will work again, as we mentioned previously, as any loyalty program. So you buy something and you're awarded with a WaBi. It will be a bit different for us because we're building a platform and not just we're not just the only merchant in the system, or at least we don't aim to be. Therefore, different merchants will have different deals in terms of because if you look at the loyalty points, they different way to look at them is discounts. Different merchants will be giving out different discounts. So the amount of WaBi given out will also be different, but still the principle remains the same, right? So you buy something within the Walimai ecosystem, you get the WaBi, or you scan, you get the WaBi.
There's actually an interesting point that comes in with the labels that you're using that helps the building of the loyalty program.
Right.
So right now, if you notice, the loyalty programs are not so big with the consumer products and a lot bigger in the airlines and in hotels.
Right.
And one of the big reasons for that is that in airlines and the hotels, you actually have the proof of purchase. Right? So you know that this consumer bought this particular product.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do that in FMCG and in retail because you need a very sophisticated IT system that works with the retailer, and there's all sorts of loyalty programs, interconnectedness and all that to make it work. And also for the consumer right now, they can basically cheat that system because all the products are essentially the same. You can say, well, I bought this product, then you come back with the same can and say, oh, I bought it again. Now, with the labels, with Walimai labels, we're able to establish that proof of purchase, essentially, because essentially we can have people scanning before they open the product and after they open the product. So, because they open the product, they already damaged it, so it cannot be resold, right? So that essentially establishes that the person has bought the product, and that's for any producer or any retailer, that's the most important event in terms of the business. If the person bought the product, that's when you really want to reward them, right? If they scan something, if they shared it on Facebook or WeChat or whatever, you want to reward them somewhat. But if they bought this, that's the way you can really reward them. And this is what we're going to be able to establish in our loyalty point system with WaBis and with our labels, whereas right now, it's very hard to do that with an FMCG.
So are you going to be connecting yourselves with social media, whenever you scan, you could share on Facebook or WeChat? Okay, great.
I mean, this is one of the standard marketing paths that people take to use the loyalty programs, of course.
Yeah, great idea. Okay. So the next question, potential exchanges, any future partnership. So I know this could be kind of confidential at this point, but are you looking at any exchange listing or anything about that?
Of course, we started working on that, though we didn't go too far yet. I would say we didn't determine on which exact exchange we're going to list. And what we said at the pre-ICO, and that's exactly the thing that I would say now, we want to ask the community, understand what is the exchange that's going to be more comfortable and better for people who are supporting us right now.
Right.
So far we've heard Bittrex quite a lot. We heard a few other names, but I think Bittrex came out more often, and I think now as community grows more and more, we will ask that question a few more times.
Right.
And that will be, I wouldn't say 100% deterministic of which exchange we're going to list, because they might have some requirements there.
Well, because we're looking at the demography of our contributors. Like it would be, it would not make much sense to list on the Chinese exchanges because we're not selling to Chinese citizens, right? For now, even if they were not banned in China. But so basically we'll ask the community to see which ones, whether be it US, Japan, Korea, Europe, whatever, and list that.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Which merchant stores in China will you be partnering up in the future? Like where the list of products are. So this question is really just on future partnership or where WaBi is heading towards. Anything else to share about it?
So we already started working with 3 baby stores in Jiaxing City in China. And this is, I wouldn't say that it's a big partnership right now, it's a pilot for us, right? We're testing, we're improving, there's a lot of things that we can improve, we already see that. But the fact that the stores and the store owners were very excited about our products, they were very excited about the labels, the cans, etc., that was a very good sign for us. So now we're going through the stage of doing another step of improvement so that we can grow a bit bigger, then we'll see again, improve it again. So that's on the baby stores and the offline channel. There's a lot more that we can do in the online channel as well, because the Walimai sales channel doesn't have to restrict ourselves just to offline or just to online, it goes across. So
social media sales?
Any social media sales, any P2P sales, effectively there's a safe channel that could go through, it's a sub-channel within each channel, right? So anywhere there could be a partnership. And on top of that, there's the direct work with the producers, but I think it will take us some time to build up more of the usage and more of the people who trust the channel, who like the channel, because that's going to be the biggest attraction point for the producers.
Cool. So where do you see yourself in the next 2 to 3 years' time? I mean, cryptocurrency, it's going through major changes with regulations and all. So how do you think that will impact you, and where do you see WaBi going in the next 2 to 3 years?
I think there are sort of 2 parts to this question. Right. First one is about WaBi itself. Second one is about like the grand vision for where we're heading. So I mean, our vision is building this an omni-channel sort of independent of any particular sort of sales format. So we want to be sold everywhere, and we want to be everywhere, and we want to be seen as this as a trusted channel, or if you want, a component branding for the consumer. So basically, we want to become when the consumer sees product protected with Walimai, it becomes sort of a minimum standard that ensures quality of both the product and the service that can be expected. So if you think it's like more to be a Starbucks of safe products, right? So there is like a minimum level of quality that we want to be. In terms of, I think it's a bit hard to say now in terms of like geographies or particular product offerings that we're going to have. But as Alex was saying, we'll be sort of adding more product categories probably before the end of the year. Where we're going to expand internationally, this is I think it's a bit hard to say right now, right? Because for us, we really believe that we should exploit our home market to the maximum extent before stretching us to think, unless there is a very clear business model and very clear use cases we can adopt. Because again, we don't believe in sort of one size fits all approach. Right? It has to be very individual, because our technology is tailored to our business model and vice versa. In terms of WaBi usage, we see it as a lifeblood of an ecosystem, right? So it will be used within the loyalty point, and as the channel grows, just the circulation of WaBi will be up and up and up.
When we were choosing the name, we were essentially choosing the Chinese name. From
I was wondering that too.
But also we wanted to choose something that Westerner could pronounce.
Okay. But because of the frog suction and
there's frog, and there's also digging.
So I was wondering, right? So when Domo actually approached me, I was like, why frog? Okay, anyway.
It's also digging.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So last question, final one. So is there any dates that you need to note, or for how long the IC will be kept open, things like that? Anything you want to address to the people?
I'd say just subscribe to the channel now. And I'm not just speaking about your YouTube channel, I'm speaking about our Slack and Telegram or emails channel, just so that you will be updated, right? There's going to be more things coming out regarding the bidding system, regarding the dates. Like I said, 7th of November is the likely date where we're going to start. It may be stretched throughout a month or so, but we're just confirming the exact date so that we're very clear on that as well.
Okay.
That's all.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello. This is Alex.
This is Yas.
We're from the WaBi team.
And you're watching
Cryptogrinders.